And thanks, Ben. And I've got my trusty PA Benita with us today too. She's actually dialing in from Bali. So before we actually dive into the law, just some tips to get the most out of this session. What I would encourage you to do is to take notes. This isn't really like a classroom. It's really self-education that we're talking about. But I know how easy it is to think you're going to remember something and then it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. So if anything comes up that's important to you, I do encourage you to take notes. The other way to really anchor learning, of course, is to participate, to get involved. And so I'd encourage you also to share in the chat. But I was on a webinar the other day, and a couple of people started engaging in a conversation in the chat. You know, one of them was asking, you know, where she lived and what she did and all of that. And it kind of acted as a bit of a distraction. So what I would suggest is use the chat to respond to whatever the question is being asked. In other words, use the chat to help the group. Don't get sidelined into a private conversation. And that will also help you anchor your learnings as well. Because sometimes some of the things when we share, we feel a little bit vulnerable. But in expressing that vulnerability, in putting whatever you want to into the chat so that others can see, it actually helps you get over that sense of, oh, I wonder if I should share this or not. So this room, if you like, is like a practice area for getting your message out there. And I suppose the final thing, of course, is to not just take on board the lesson, but to actually do something with it, because the hardest part in any of this is always about applying what you learn. And I know how difficult that can be, particularly when we've got so many things on. Life is complicated. I totally get that. But even if you just take one action, then that's been worthwhile. So I'm going to start by asking you a question. And I relate very, very much to this situation, and perhaps some of you do as well. And that is, do you ever feel, or maybe you're feeling this right now, that you have a great product or a great service, but you're not making the income that you expected to be making? So maybe you've just enter in the chat, just yes, if you relate to this, because I'd just be interested to know where you're at. So you might have transitioned maybe from a full-time job, you're now acting as a consultant or a coach, or whatever your journey has been. You're at a point in your life where you're going, gee, you know, I took the risk, but somehow it's not quite turning out the way I thought it would be. So just, yeah, thank you, Sarah. It's frustrating, exactly. Yeah, how much is enough? Yeah, that it opens that question up, doesn't it, Russ? Maybe it's not as much as we thought, but we still need to feel comfortable and not wake up at 3 in the morning worrying about money. Yeah. Yeah, Karen have been, but seems to be shifting. Yeah, that's terrific. And when you can start to gain that traction, and I've been watching you, Karen, and I think you're a good example of this law of impact in action, actually. Yeah, and Phil can say, I can relate working to speed the transition to mitigate risk. Absolutely, because there's only so long that you can hold this position. And if you don't have a clear strategy going forward, it's so easy to fall into resistance and give up, which is what so many do. And Lisa's saying sometimes, but in a growth stage. Yeah. So this is great. It's just so helpful to know where everyone's at. Yeah, about having a strong pipeline, there are ebbs and flows with that. Absolutely. So let's now look at, okay, so if you're experiencing this or you have in the past, let's get to the bottom of why that might be. Because I know one of the things that we tend to do, if we're not making the money, the income that we think we should be, we automatically assume that there's something wrong with us, or there's something wrong with the product or service that we're offering. And so the typical response to that would be to go, okay, oh, I better expand my product. I better offer something bigger and better. And that can send us down a real rabbit hole. So what do you think is the problem? If you're not personally making the income, what do you think the reason for that might be? And I'm just going to say, this is a space where there are no wrong or right answers, but to get you thinking about this is a great way to start finding the answers yourself. So I'm just going to be prompting you throughout this session. So what do you think might be the problem or might have been the problem? And maybe there are a few. Yeah, Vince, getting your message out to those you can help. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so in other words, you're saying it's not actually about me necessarily, yeah, or my product or service. Yeah, Lisa, finding more creative ways to get the message out. Yeah, absolutely. This is great because you're in solution mindset. Joanne, time. Yeah, and that's a struggle too. So we've got this this tug of war between delivering our product, doing the sales, and also getting the message out there. I understand that. Karen, I don't have a clear message. Right. Okay. Yeah. Naomi, mindset, fear of success. Yeah. Sarah, marketing invisibility. Yes. Same, Joanne, same over, over delivering, Vince. All right. Okay. So the objective of today is to give you some clarity around this and some steps to go forward. And if I don't answer each of the comments personally, don't think I haven't seen them, but thanks. This is great, guys. You're really getting the gist of this. Okay, so let's look at what the problem isn't, all right? It's not your product or service, and it's probably not how good you are at actually delivering it. These are all refinements that come along the path, but this is not the big problem. Probably what you're offering is fine. And if you've already got some testimonials and feedback from your client, and they're giving you good feedback, then rest assured that that's not really the issue. Because this is where we can get caught up going, I'm just going to keep improving what I'm doing. And finally, people will come to realize how good it is. But you know that old expression, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to my door. I mean, that expression dates back to the 1800s, I think. And it might have been true back then, but it's absolutely not true now. And if we assume that thinking, that mindset, we're really dooming ourselves from the beginning. So, and it's not that people don't need or want what you're offering. So what is it? What's the reason that it becomes a struggle to make the money? And if this is your struggle, you are not alone. This is almost part of the journey. It's something that everyone experiences. You know, once upon a time, you could go to university, get an education in a profession, hang your shingle up on the door, and people would start rolling in. But that doesn't apply to any of us in this room. It doesn't work like that. So how do we bridge the gap between where you're at now and where you are in a position where not only you're making the income, but you're having the impact? Because all of us, let's face it, we're not here, are we, just for the money? If we were, we'd be doing something else. So it's really about making the impact. How do we do that? So what's the problem? Well, this is the lovely thing about the laws, because they crystallize things for us. And you know what the problem is deep down, but it's a scary problem, I have to say. The problem is it's not about your product or service or how you deliver it or whether or not there's a need for it. It comes down to one thing: obscurity. If people can't see you, if they don't know you, how do they know that you have that you can help them in some way? So what the law states is that if you're not making the amount of money or making the impact that you feel you deserve, it's simply because you do not have a great enough influence over many. Okay. So in an email that I sent out this week, I shared my experience of this, that I came up with this great process and I was so excited about it. And so I tested it out on my circle of friends and my network. And I thought, oh, this is going to be huge. And then what I realized was, and this is one of the reasons I'm holding this session today, because I could relate to this law so well. This absolutely spoke to my journey. Was that I thought that the product would be enough, you know, that if it really created transformational change in people, you know, people would be, you know, beating a path to my door, and it just doesn't happen like that. So that's what compelled me to share this law with you. So it comes back to that thing that you already know. It's not how many people you know, but who knows you. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Phil, I've always loved the saying, if they don't know you, they won't flow you. Exactly. And we need that river of people who know us to float us down the stream where we can reach more and more people. Yeah. Okay, so the law of impact is about addressing this very, very issue. And it actually comes from a very, very old source, which I'll reveal in a moment. And what I like about it is that it gives us a solid structure to follow, some firm steps. So I like to think, I don't know, back in the days when we had linoleum floors in the 50s, there was a big issue with people wearing stiletto heels, because what happened to the heel when you walked on this soft surface? What would happen? The heel would make a dent in the linoleum floor and wreck it. And what we're seeing here is a choice that we have. You can put the front of your foot at the front of the shoe and it won't make any impact because you're spreading yourself over a wide area. Or you can become very, very focused and, like that sharp stiletto heel, make a real impact, make your dent, your personal dent in the world. And so this is what we're juggling with at the moment. How do we become that really sharp, pointy heel that makes the impact where we want to make it? So there are different ways that we can operate. So let's just say this is the present reality. And I owe this chart, by the way, to Simon Bowen. I don't know if any of you know Simon. He runs a group called Models Method, and he uses visuals to sell. And he's been a great influence in my life, a great mentor. But anyway, he came up with this chart, if you like, because we have options, and it's very healthy and it's empowering to look at the options that you have going forward from this place. So in the beginning, when we start out on this journey of how do I do what I love, put it out there into the world, solve a problem for others, and make an impact, we have different ways of approaching this. Now, when there's a big change in the world, which we've seen in the last 18 months, what happens is that fear kicks in, and we can feel the fear. It's palpable. And we go, well, I'm feeling fearful because of COVID. So it's very easy to say COVID is the source of my fear. But what if that fear was actually underlying? What if you had that fear in you all the time and that it was just triggered by certain things? So it's helpful for us to know, what is my natural fear response when I'm under pressure? Because when you can start to know that fear response and understand it, then you can create distance so you don't fall into the trap of going into an automatic behavior pattern. So when we're confronted by fear, like, oh my God, I'm not making enough money. Has this all been a huge mistake? Should I change paths? Let's say there are 3 ways that you can respond to this. So the first way, and looking at this chart, we want to get to some kind of future reality where the future is golden. We're doing what we love. We're making good money from it. And we're going, wow, I can look back on my life now and feel not an ounce of regret. That's the future reality that we're wanting, right? So that's the question, is how do we get there? So let's look at the different ways that we can respond to whatever fear is circulating in our system. So the first way is basically to come from a state of freeze. So we go, okay, what I'm going to do now is just not do anything. I won't change anything. And this is where a lot of people actually fall into. They feel that it's safer to do nothing than to take action, because maybe if you've taken action in the past and it's cost you money, and maybe your partner is saying, why are you spending all this money on programs and courses? You can't keep doing this. And so go, right now I'm just going to freeze. And we go into a state of panic. Now, there's no such thing as a stasis. There's no such thing as a non-dynamic system. So even when you don't think you're doing anything, something is happening to you and you start this downward drift. And it's very, very hard to come back from that position. It's harder than where you might be at currently. So basically, not doing anything is really not an option. But what most of us do, we kind of know that, right? So we go, yeah, of course I've got to do something. And so instead, what we do is we end up tinkering. And this is like a flight response. So we haven't gone into freeze, but we've kind of run away from what is the real problem, the elephant in the room. And so by being in denial of that, we start tinkering. So we might, muck around with our service. We might change our pricing structure. We might offer more programs. But essentially, we're taking lots and lots of little actions but we're not actually affecting real change. Does anyone relate to that? Just put Y for yes in the chat if you notice that you've gone into that kind of behavior, that a behavior of avoidance as soon as you're under pressure. So yeah, and the trap here is we think we're being productive because we're doing things. We're in action mode, and we've been taught that taking action is the solution. Yeah, Phil, you just caught yourself and had to readjust, exactly. But the end result is that you end up being exactly where you started. Nothing actually changes. So yeah, it seems like a very common response. So how do we counter that in a very conscious and constructive way? So the third response, if you know anything about psychology, you probably know the three responses: freeze, flight, and of course the final one is fight. And when we actually fight, this is when we stay focused on impact. So in other words, and this is very hard if we're in any kind of fear mode, because we tend to get caught up in ourselves. So we have to remind ourselves always of the bigger picture. What's the impact I want to make? Why am I even doing this? I know money's important, but I know money is not the key motivation here, and it never will be. So what is the impact I want to create? And if you can stay impact focused, so it's not just about you and your immediate needs, physical needs, this is where you get into fight. This is where you start to channel that inner warrior that we all need to be able to tap into when the chips are down. We need to be able to respond in a positive way. And even if you don't think of yourself as a fighter, this is the mode that you need to adopt. So you can be a lovely, soft, happy, easygoing person, but even if that's you, you still need to be able to draw on this inner warrior, right? Because let's face it, your fulfillment depends on this, right? If you give up on this thing that you know that you want to do in your heart of hearts, will you be able to forgive yourself going forward? Just write yes or no in the chat. If you gave up, would you be able to forgive yourself if you gave up on your current path? And there's no right or wrong answer. You can say yes, I would, and that's absolutely fine. Parents saying never, Joanne, no. Naomi, no. Russ, yes, but would be disappointing. Yeah, so we need to know what the consequences are of giving up. So this is where we start out. This is the interesting thing. We start out at a place where we're all kind of in a similar situation, and our enemy is time. So the more time elapses, the more these lines become divergent, and the harder it is if you're on the red line or the orange line to actually catch up. So that's why it's so important that your attitude and your mindset is in the right place from the get-go, and that you have a system to follow. Yeah. Thank you, Phil. You would forgive yourself, but believe I will ultimately have to answer to the use of my talents and gifts. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're in that space where you know you have something special to share, and we all do, a special gift, and you feel that you're squandering it, that is something that we all of us have to address. Yeah. And Janet says, yes, if it opens up another door. Yeah. So if you aren't sure that you're on the right path right now, that is probably the right response, Janet. So it's a matter of whether you know in your heart of hearts that you're on the right path or not. Okay. So if you're still in the exploratory phase, yeah, then it might be the right thing to go, yeah, this isn't working, so I'm going to pivot at this point. All right. So basically the law of impact is all about how to create an income and influence by making an impact. And let's just be clear here, what impact isn't. It's not the number of followers on Facebook. So impact is all about engagement. How are people engaging with you? Just like you're engaging now in this room. That is when you're having impact, when you're putting something out there and someone is responding to you. So you're living in exchange. This is the true nature of impact. And this is how you can actually make your difference in the world, make your contribution, is by understanding what it takes to reach that level of engagement, because it doesn't happen automatically. So there's a wonderful quote here from Aristotle, the Greek philosopher. And so these laws have not just come out of the ether. They actually go way, way, way back to ancient wisdom. And I just love the simplicity of this that I'm going to share with you. So how do we make an impact? And basically what he defined were that there are 3 very, very clear steps. And it starts with you have to have a definite, clear, practical goal and an objective. So you have to be clear about what it is. He calls it an ideal. What it is, what's the nature of the impact? Remember that stiletto heel? That's all about focus. So understanding what is that impact. And we're going to do an exercise on this in a moment. So I'm just outlining the 3 steps, and then we'll go back to this, because this is really the foundation. The second thing, which is interesting, is to have the necessary means to achieve your end. So that doesn't just mean, you know, can you afford to do another program, but the means in terms of all your assets, right? Not just financial ones. Do you have the wisdom? Do you have the experience? Do you have the skills? Do you have the tools, the materials, the methods, the structure? So you've got your goal, and then that's if you like the why, the thing that gets you out of bed, and then you have to have the means, the necessary means. And then the third step is simply adjust all those means that you have to that goal. In other words, take everything that you have, that you know, that you possess, or your drive and your desire, the skills and everything that you've acquired, all those assets that add up to who you are and your true value, your intrinsic value, and start directing them towards that goal and objective. Does that make sense? Just put MS in the chat if that makes sense, and feel free to say no, or if you've got a question, feel free to put it in the chat. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? And to think that that these philosophies were devised in a day when you know, they were probably writing on papyrus or etching things in stone, so they had to be very solid on what they were sharing, because you couldn't just suddenly edit it and change it online. And they've stood the test of time. Good. So it seems like everyone's on board with that. So let's look at the first piece. Let's look at what's your goal, what's the impact that you want to achieve. And if you only take this away from this session, that's wonderful. Because what we do, we kind of go out there, but maybe we haven't actually clarified what it is that we want to do. What is the impact? If we don't know what the impact is, how can we make it? So we have to understand it. So think about this, and then I'm going to give you some time to actually write it down. And if you feel like doing, feel free to share it in the chat too. But think about, what is your goal? What do you want? What is the impact that you want to make? And it can be one of 2 things. It can be offering a solution to a problem that millions of people are suffering from. So as they say, the bigger the problem, the greater your potential impact. So thinking about that. And equally, it doesn't have to be necessarily problem focused. So it could be that you just want to bring joy to people's lives through your talents or gifts. So think of an artist or a musician. They weren't necessarily focused on solving a problem, but they had a burning desire to express whatever it was in them, in their creative soul, to positively impact the world just through the beauty of their art. And so it's kind of either or it could even be both, you know. So for instance, if someone's feeling depressed and they look at a beautiful artwork or they listen to some wonderful music, it can lift their spirit. So it is solving a problem indirectly, but that might not have been the artist's intention. So start to think about what your goal is. Which of those categories does it fall into? And just by way of example, I'll share with you my goal, and something that I've included in my goal is a number, and there's something wonderful about quantifying it. I'm not a numerate person. I'm definitely, I'm on the side of language and words. So numbers don't excite me, but when you can put a number to a goal, it suddenly, something triggers in your brain and says, okay, this person is serious. So my goal, and I just share this by way of example, is basically to help 1 million people wake up to who they really are, what their gift is, and how to share it with the world so they can live a prosperous and meaningful life. Okay, so that's my goal. And when I get back to Bali, where I'm normally based, I'm going to have this on my wall. Something I've been missing in the last year is a space that I can call my own, where I can put these things on the wall. But and this is possibly a long goal. Yours doesn't necessarily have to be that long, but put a number in it. And a year ago, I would never put 1 million people. A year ago, I put 10,000. And then I realized, but hang on a sec, if you've got something really worthwhile that is worth sharing, what if it's something that ultimately you could teach others to do? So start to think that it's not just about you and your individual capacity. If it's a real problem that you're solving, how could you leverage that? You know, maybe through some kind of training program, for instance, so that you're helping way more people than you could do individually. All right, so any questions on this? I'm going to invite you now just to spend a minute to write down, just trusting yourself to write down what your goal is, and just feel free to enter in the chat if you've got any questions on that. All right, so let's just, I don't think anyone's got any questions. So I'm going to give you a minute just to write down your goal, and don't worry about whether it's realistic. Just think about what would you like your impact to be, so that when you look back on, good to see you back here, Russ. When you look back on your life, go, this is exactly what the impact that I wanted to make. But have it something that really excites you. So if I came to the end of my life and I said, oh, I probably didn't impact 1 million people, I'd probably be okay with that. So I'm not setting myself up for disappointment and failure. All I'm doing is saying, this goal excites me. This goal makes me feel alive. It's not about ego, it's about helping others. So just writing down, take a minute, and I will be quiet. I'm going to mute myself while I give you that time. And then I'll pop back on in 60 seconds. Okay, and that's a minute. And if it's a shitty first draft, that's fine. Your goal is something that you can refine over and over again. Now, Vince has shared his, wow, what a great, it's such a tangible goal, Vince. I'll read it out. To help the 1.3 billion disabled become more enabled to live a life with more freedom, we're beginning with a smart adaptive wheelchair. All right, Elio, yeah, smart adapt wheelchair. What an awesome goal. And so what you've done here is you've kept it, you've separated the two. So you've said how many people are suffering from this problem. It's a big problem, 1.3 billion people, and to live a life with more freedom. So that's really the goal. And then you've got the how in there as well. Yeah, because the wheelchair is just step one, isn't it? There could be other things too. That's excellent. So just enter in the chat, Vince, how does that make you feel, having that goal? What kind of emotions does it evoke inside you? And Russ is sharing here. Yeah, as a perfectionist, it's hard. Yeah, I do a separate maybe I can, you can take part in my research program, Russ, because I'm researching anti-heroes, and the perfectionist is a very common one. And I'd like to interview you on that. But yeah, freedom is the highest value. So yeah, helping as many people as possible tap into truth and live with passion and freedom. But also want to share my way of seeing beauty in everything they experience in their experience. Yeah. And so start to think, Russ, just start to quantify the number of people. I know it feels really cloudy and vague, but even if you start with a number, like when I started, my number was 1. I just had to help one person, and I crawled up from that position. So to put a number to it gives our brain something to latch onto. Yeah, exactly, Vince. Bigger than myself goal. Yeah, that's right. So you start to get out of your own way when you really find attach. And have you noticed, Vince, when you do that, that fear starts to dissipate because it's not about your ego anymore. It's about something way bigger than you. It's kind of curious, that, isn't it? That the size of the goal actually isn't intimidating. It's what starts to zap the fear. And Lisa shared to help make extraordinary changes in 1 million people's lives by helping them get into alignment, yes, with who they are, why they're here, and step into their purpose. Absolutely. And Lisa has an amazing process. She's a fantastic NLP practitioner. I was working with her yesterday, actually. And so, and our goals are quite common, but we come at it from totally different paths. So it's not so much the path. So actually, it's not the product or service, is it? It's the goal that is the really important thing here. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And Joanne, yeah, to help 1 million people share their wisdom with the world, elevate their authority, and achieve their dreams. I love that. So again, Joanne's got this big picture goal, and she has her own path too. So she does it through helping people express their stories through writing, through launching books. So the how speaks to our particular gift, right? So Joanne, really from an early age has always loved writing, and so it's natural for her to achieve that goal from the perspective of what she loves doing. So so without getting into the how, it's really the why. This is the goal, really is the why. This is what gets us out of bed. Needs to be our focus. Remember that stiletto heel. Karen, to inspire 1 million plus people to believe in possibility beyond their current perceived reality. Yes. And to back themselves to take courageous action to step into that possibility. So Karen, she's got a program called Get Off the Bench, and she's great. She's all about not only helping people see what they're capable of, but getting them to take action. And that's really your superpower, isn't it, Karen? She's such a motivating person. Because she so believes not only in herself, but in others, and you really feel that. So more people doing this creates a movement towards a tipping point for a better world. Absolutely, yeah. And Karen's gift, of course, is in speaking. So she's just great at rallying groups of people together, which is such a gift. And Janice, to touch every person in the world in a positive way through partnerships and the pursuit of sustainable development goals. That's wonderful. So again, Janice, what I would do, one of the things that can be a risk here is that if we can start to identify with the solution and identify our self-worth, attach our self-worth to our success, and we don't want to do that. So, and if we create a solution that is so big that we alone can't solve it, there's a risk that if we don't achieve it, we get, we feel that we failed in some way. So Janice, what I would do is just put a number for now against this goal, because it starts to turn the goal into an objective, not an extension of you. Do you get that? There's a difference here, that the goal is something that you want to achieve. If you don't achieve that number, that's fine, right? There's no shame in that, but it's just to help create the goal as something that sits outside of you, that isn't a part of you. Lisa, my goal is to work with entrepreneurs to regain their time, allowing them to stay in their zone of expertise instead of getting caught up in the chaos of the business administration. Yeah, so it's really the gift of freedom that you're giving people, like most of the people in this room, Lisa. So you probably got some future clients in this room. And I would, again, I would just quantify it to make it a little bit more real, because it's the number that's kind of exciting. Don't worry about it sounding like you're full of yourself or, oh, I could never achieve that. Don't let that little doubting voice interfere. But that's great. So what Lisa offers is it doesn't matter where you're based in the world, an admin assistance service, like, so you've got your virtual helpers out there, and she's got a great affection, if you like, and a great emotional investment in vets. And so the people that she works with tend to be the wives of veterans. And they, of course, are moving around a lot. So they don't necessarily have their own geographic community. So they rely on working online. So there's a lovely synergy there between their life situation and who they can help. So if you're working online, or if you're not, you might not be based in the US, it doesn't matter. Lisa still has people who can help you at a very reasonable price. Yeah, that's right, Russ, breaking through your stuff. Yeah, 1 million, I think it has to be enough to excite us, and it's absolutely possible. And Naomi's sharing here, I want to transform and change 1 to 2 million people's lives to a happier, healthier, more fulfilled life, so they know that, who they are, what they're capable of, and their authentic self, because that would make me truly happy and help me find inner peace in a time of turmoil. Yeah, that's a great point, actually. The work that we do, one of the reasons, or one of the nice byproducts of it, is that in healing others, we heal ourselves. And so what Naomi does, and maybe Naomi, you could even speak more to this in your goal, is Naomi's is an amazing athlete, and she's also very knowledgeable on nutrition. So maybe it could just speak even more to how you help people through their fitness by looking after their body. And also that group of people who are looking for partners. We're going to get to this later. We're going to get to the focus, who your ideal audience is, in a moment. Amanda Jane, impacting millions of humans through these challenging times and uncertainty, uncover what they want and make it happen and live a purposeful and meaningful life. Yeah, so again, I'd probably get more focused on the number. But that sounds very, very motivating. And Amanda Jane's based in Bali, and she's been doing work with people in retreats, physical retreats, live retreats in Bali now for many years. And she's got a great following of people too. And Lisa's responding, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sarah, to introduce 200 new students to the transformative experience of our classes by the end of this year. Yeah, so that's a great goal. I would call that an intermediate goal, and I think that's absolutely good for this period of time. And maybe start to think, when we did the Fifth Door program, that other goal about nature and connection with nature and introducing kids to experience the value of nature, just have a think whether that's your longer term, most heartfelt goal. So all of these goals, the role of the goal is to engage your heart, to give your heart something to get excited about. So just put it past that litmus test to see what's the goal that's going to most engage me and make me feel excited to be alive. Yeah, so Janice has got 8 billion people in the world. Might be hard to reach North Korea in my lifetime. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So think about how many your work could personally affect. Just think about that. So out of those 8 billion, how many do you think could be influenced directly or indirectly through your particular contribution? Yeah, Lisa's incredible at what she does. And saying, Lisa Bowers is saying potentially 10,000 entrepreneurs. Yeah, that's great. So just ask yourself, Lisa, does that get you excited? Does that make you go, yeah, I can really make a difference? All right. So I won't continue reading through these because otherwise we won't honor our time frame. But I think everyone's getting the gist of this, and do know that you'll probably change the goal. The point is, have a goal, okay? Just have a goal, and have a goal that you go, oh yeah, this makes me feel good. This makes me feel like I'm on my path. All right. So once you have a definite, clear and goal and objective, just repeating this quote from Aristotle, So the next part is really the guts of this session, and that is having the necessary means to achieve your end, okay? That's really what this session is about. What does that even mean in today's context? So, and then adjusting all your means to that end. So that's really what we're going to focus on now. What does that mean? So you've got the objective, you know that you're on your path. How do you reach that impact goal that you've just articulated? So this is where we have to follow 5 steps. Now, I might have kind of, in a funny, unconscious way, known about these 5 steps, but until they were articulated to me when I read this law, I really wasn't practicing it, and I absolutely broke all the rules. So I want you to understand that with this law, like a law, it's not like a social law, like you're not allowed to exceed a speeding limit. It's more like a spiritual law, if you like. And when you break a spiritual law, you're essentially betraying yourself. There's no real higher authority that's going to necessarily punish you. You don't get a fine, but you're betraying yourself. And that's why it's so important to embrace these laws as guidance from somewhere else, probably within you. You already know this, but sometimes it's very helpful to have it reiterated. So, yeah, warning, don't deviate from this order. All right. So there are 5 steps, and I'm just going to spell out the steps. And as I do, just start to think about, okay, how does this apply to me? Did anyone have a horrible experience at school? Like you have school trauma, maybe a teacher yelled at you or, made you feel stupid in some way, and you spent the rest of your life running away from any type of formal education? Just put Y for yes in the chat. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who are incredibly, intellectually intelligent and have as a core destructive belief, I'm stupid. It seems to be most painful for those people who are really intelligent, but the school system simply didn't, yes, the school system didn't suit. And instead of putting the responsibility on a broken system, we've taken it on ourselves. Yeah. So if the word education triggers you, understand we're not talking about education as you probably think of it. The actual word, the derivation of the word education comes from the Latin educare, which is a verb that means to draw something out of. Like aqueducts or a duct. A duct is like a thing. It's something that conveys a material. Like an aqueduct is there to transport water. So education, the original meaning, probably in Aristotle's day, of education was to draw something out of you that's already there. So that's all we're talking about. We're not talking about having to go back to some horrible school system. And what's interesting, have you noticed in this current world that we're living in, our self-education is really the new growth industry. We are learning to self-educate, particularly if school, the traditional system, let us down. So self-education is the new norm. So what are the options? And what does education actually give to us? So let's assume that the only way that you can really grow is to continue to receive input from others who are going to draw something out of you. Does that make sense? Just write MS if that makes sense, just so I know that I'm not going off on a weird tangent. Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, so it's about, we never stop learning, in other words. And there are so many different ways that we can learn. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so know that the path is to continue to gain input from others so that you can continue to learn and to expand, okay? Because we all follow in the footsteps of others. And when you do that, it gives you the confidence, if you like, to step into your own path with a greater sense of decisiveness and creativity. So what really enhances this is if you've got that goal. So education without a goal is a bit meaningless. Have you ever fallen into the trap of, I don't know what my path is, so I'll just do another course or program? Just put Y for yes in the chat. You know, maybe someone will give me some clarity, and maybe, you know, yeah, we've all felt that, right? Thanks, Joanne, and yeah, and Naomi and Janice. Yeah, everyone laughing with, yeah, the Ring of Truth laugh. Thanks, Janice. Yeah, and Amanda Jane. Yeah, absolutely. Particularly in this space, all of us, I think, can fall into that trap. So the discipline to apply is to have that goal in mind, and you have to say, will this, whatever it is, program or course, get me closer to that goal, or will it bring that goal closer to me? And the question to ask now is, well, what do I need to know to achieve my goal? Probably there's a whole bunch of stuff, but it'll fall into kind of perspective. You know, what do I need to know now? What do I need to know later? You know, start to go, what do I need that I don't currently have? Not because I'm inadequate in some way, but because other people have walked this path before me and they've made the mistakes, and I can probably benefit from what they have to show. So knowing that ongoing education is essential, what actually does it contribute to us? So gives you more skill sets. So start to think about what it is that you need right now. Do you need more skill sets? Are there more tools that you need? The gaining knowledge helps you refine what you want to accomplish. It helps you identify systems and shortcuts and piece together winning strategies. So they're just some of the benefits of increasing what you know. You know, sometimes it's technical knowledge. Now let's look at the options. And what I'm going to ask you at the end of this is to write down, and feel free to share in the chat as well, just one thing that you think might be of value to you. So rather than going, oh, there are all these courses and I'm going to sign up for all of them, become very, very selective and think, what is the one conduit to knowledge that I could embrace that would give me pleasure? All right, so let's look at some of the options just as thought starters. All the different ways you can self-educate. Yeah, so university is an obvious one. And, you know, adult learning courses abound nowadays. So, you know, there's that. That speaks very much to the conventional path as well. Have you noticed that there's a growing trend away from formal education, though? You know, that the Gen Zers coming through are not necessarily feeling that they have to have a college degree. So we're seeing that. But just asking yourself, okay, would letters after my name really give me something valuable that I don't currently have? Or am I pursuing that because I feel somehow inadequate? And I know when I started my work, because I've never done a psychology degree, and my partner Ralph said to me, oh, do you think you should get a degree in psychology? And something inside me said no, actually. And I was really I just didn't feel it, if you like. So sometimes education can actually stymie your creative self. So you have to be very careful. But if it's something very, very technical or whatever, you know, absolutely. You know, if you're going to go and operate on people, you have to be taught how to do it. All right. And sometimes it can help you in a way that you might not have predicted. So Sarah, I know you won't mind me sharing this story. My sister Sarah is a vet. So she went through a science degree, realized that wasn't quite right. Then she went and did vet science, and she started working as a vet for many years. Then she realized that, you know, being in a white lab coat dispensing medicine to sick animals wasn't really her passion. So then she moved to teaching women how to gain fitness through pole dancing. And she's got 3 pole dancing studios in Sydney currently. But there's still this calling, actually, this love of animals in particular and nature in general. And so that's like a calling that she had. So in a funny way, her university degree, even though it's not relevant to what she's doing now, it's given her an understanding of how animals work, their anatomy, and all of that, which will hold her in really good stead going forward when she's working with animals down the track, with her goal of running a wild animal refuge centre. because and a place where animals can roam free. This is in Australia, where we are so short of natural environments, and so much of our wildlife is endangered. So you can see, just as that example, how sometimes something that you might have picked up in the past, you go, was that really even relevant? But it's interesting how it can kind of boomerang back to you. So that's one option. Programs and courses, of course, and they abound. So getting clear on what you feel is stopping you at the moment. Is there a program or course that could unblock you or steer you in the right direction? And even in this room, there are people here who have wonderful courses, so they're worth checking out. Books and videos. I personally find it hard to read a book. I'm a very auditory person, so I find it hard to stay awake, to be honest. But then there are other people who are avid readers. So think about, what's your key learning modality? Are you a visual person? So if you're primarily visual, you're probably a little more suited to reading, or maybe you take it on as an audio book. And visual people tend to love videos as well. So sometimes we can beat ourselves up for being resistant to certain forms of learning, but that's because it's not really suited to us. So as I go through this list, just look at what feels most interesting to you. What about online forums, networking groups? So again, be aware of where your intelligence lights up. There's an exercise that we do in the 5th door called the 8 types of intelligence. And I had no idea before I did this diagnostic test that my intelligence was actually in interpersonal, in relating to people. And when I was at school, I did like the highest level of math and physics and chemistry. I can't believe why I even did that, because it was so not me. And I never valued ability to relate or communicate. I didn't see that as a worthwhile skill. But I'm naturally drawn to online forums and networking. So think about, what is your core intelligence? Because that's probably where you're going to learn best, where you're going to learn easiest. So I learn from conversing with people and talking to them and taking notes. So think about how you learn best. What do you naturally gravitate towards? Some people like to be guided, and I think having a coach or a mentor is probably essential along your path. And that's working one-on-one with someone or working in a group. So just put in the chat of the various avenues that are there, which is the one that you are drawn to most? And maybe it's something not even on this list. Just write in the chat, what's the learning avenue that kind of pulls you in the most, where you go, this isn't work? Janice, learning by doing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you're kinesthetic, Janice. Yeah. So that's depending on what your particular passion is, but that's a very clear clue as to where you want to be directing, not just how you learn, but also how you work going forward. Yes, Lisa's saying the importance of online forums and networking groups. Yeah, absolutely. So you probably got high interpersonal intelligence, Lisa. Yeah. Karen's books, videos, podcasts. Yeah, Karen's that runs podcasts. She's great at conversation. One of her, I'm pretty sure, Karen, tell me if I'm wrong, one of your core intelligences is music, right? So podcast speaks to that, the oral intelligence. Having spoken conversations. Yeah, AJ, yeah, you're very much a people person, so networking, and you've also got books, programs doing, and podcasts. Yeah. So, and out of those, start to go, and Vince is saying audible books, yeah, podcasts, listening while doing. So Vince, you might be auditory too. So that's interesting, because not many people are auditory. The numbers are rubbery, but it's only about 10%. So if you feel that, then gravitate to that lights you up. Education is supposed to be fun. Yeah, Phil's saying all of them. So what I'd encourage you to do is just see if you can focus on one for now, and just take note of that. If you were to just focus on one, if there was only one way that you could take on information right now, think about what that is and write that down. It's not that the other avenues are not available to you, but just remember the stiletto heel. We want to focus. I'll just give you an example. I signed up for a program which was about joint ventures 6 weeks ago, and it's a self-paced program. Have I started it? No, I haven't. I'm going to do it. But it's a challenge for me because I love interacting with people, and here I will be on my own learning this. So, you know, self-awareness is really, really important when you embark on any type of new learning program. Yeah, so Lisa's saying podcasts, books, yeah, mentoring, networking groups, courses, yeah. So even from that, Lisa, and for everyone, just see if you can refine it further. So you've just got, see if you can get it down to one type of learning. Yeah, and Lisa, yeah, you absolutely love to network. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, exactly. It's how we met, isn't it? On a network called C-Suite. Yeah. Vince says, my wife says I don't listen. Yeah. I think partners are in a separate category, Vince. Yeah. Amanda's saying mentor, right? Yeah. Lisa, networking. Yeah, Sarah, you're related to, so talking to experts in the area. Yeah, so that's a form of mentorship, isn't it? Yeah, and getting inspired by them. Yeah. Yeah, and Phil saying coach or mentor. Yeah, Karen, networking. Excellent. Okay, so stay faithful to that and just see how you go, because I know overwhelm is a big issue for all of us. See how you go, just focusing on that for now. You can always go back to the old way of everything, doing everything, but see how this new level of focus works for you. All right, so they're the ways that's step one. So understanding education is an ongoing process. It's not like you suddenly get a degree or a certificate and it's all over, right? But make education fun by gravitating to the areas that come easily to you. So step two now is create your leverage tools. What does that mean? So leverage is a lovely concept. It's like, okay, I can influence one person at a time, and that's great. Am I going to get to 1 million people? No. Or I can use what's available to me now to actually really accelerate my impact. And again, we're going to look at what the options are. So let's just look at all the platforms that are out there. And as I go through this list, I'm going to ask you again to start to gravitate to the one that feels most exciting to you, where you feel you are in home territory, where you feel comfortable. Okay, so we have the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse, I don't know much about. I haven't actually tried it myself. Pinterest, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. Now notice if you go back to your learning modalities, which one of those do you gravitate towards? So for instance, if you're very visual, I notice visual people really tend to gravitate towards Instagram and Pinterest. If you're not visual, like I'm not visual, I don't notice what people wear or what color their fingernail polish is or anything. I find Instagram and Pinterest a total chore, and I've just decided I'm not going to pursue them anymore because it's not me. So you have to go, what's you? What's the one where you feel most at home, and start to focus on that. Excellent. Thanks, Janice, for sharing that. So Janice is already on Clubhouse, and it feels like Clubhouse is a new platform, and the people who move onto it quickly will stake their territory, their turf. But yeah, so if anyone's interested, you can join Janice there. Yeah. Yeah, so start to go, instead of going, oh, I have to be across everything, stay true to yourself and go, which is the one that makes me feel good. I actually like LinkedIn as well, because it speaks to the people I tend to work with most, and I just have like a token presence on Facebook. Okay, other ways to create leverage your tools are writing a book. So has anyone in this group written a book? Just put book in the chat if you've already written a book. It'd be interesting to know. Yeah, Lisa spends a lot of time on LinkedIn. Yeah. Yeah, AJ. Yeah, AJ's just launched a book. Excellent. So there's a few people here already. So think about that experience, and we won't dive too deep because we're going to run out of time. But again, does writing a book really speak to you? If it doesn't, yeah, Lisa, yours has been processed for 10 years. Yeah, exactly. So again, but maybe Lisa, you do have, and Russ is working on it. You do have a book in you, But maybe putting it on, if it's taken 10 years, maybe it's a book that needs to be spoken, possibly, and then transcribed. So just, again, go back to where you feel most comfortable, because that could be the way you unblock that book. Writing a series of articles. And again, whatever you commit to here, you want to do in a consistent fashion, not just do and finish. So I've made that mistake of just, I'll just write an article, but then I don't do it consistently. And so that can just lead to waste of energy. Speaking. So it's amazing how speaking can just change everything. So I think for those of you here who are on Bellwether, Dan was speaking the other day. Karen, you made this point that he said, your whole world can change in 5 minutes. And that's absolutely true of speaking, particularly if you are, I think that the TED Talks still carry a lot of impact. So actually my daughter Clover had her TEDx talk upgraded to a TED Talk, and they featured it at the top of the list of the new TED Talks worldwide. And in the space of a week, she got 700,000 views. So, and that was just like, the game changer. And now she's had all these people reaching out to her that she's wanted to work with for the past 5 years. It was just that one thing. And I'm not saying that was an overnight thing, because she had a lot of help with that. She had people helping her edit it, coaches. She didn't do it on her own. But just to say that it can take just one thing like this and suddenly everything lights up. So I'm seeing in her someone who is now making a big impact in her space, which is climate change. So but pursuing this without expectation, thinking, okay, do I like the idea of speaking, or does it terrify me? So I know Karen here is a natural speaker. So you just go for what is really, speaks to you, what is almost instinctive. Expanding your email database. If you're a writer or a good communicator in writing, having that is a great way of influencing. So really funneling, your audience from social media. Ultimately, you want to have them as a group that you can communicate with on a regular basis by email. For now, email might not be the way in a year's time, but for now. So networking, we've spoken to that. So networking online. Lisa Schermerhorn was sharing how she loves networking online. Also in person, that's coming back now with COVID, with us, the world learning to live with COVID. How well does that work for you? PR is, can be a game changer as well. And there are some very good PR people out there. Actually, if anyone's interested, someone shared with me a PR forum that's happening next month. And this was Simon Bowen who shared it, and I really trust his judgment. And so if you're interested in attending a really good PR event, because again, that can be a game changer, just let me know. I'll send you the link. And then joint ventures, of course. So this is where someone who has a bigger database than you, but might benefit from working with you, you can tap into their database and then you put your message out there without having to rely on your own database, which might be a lot smaller. So so just going through those lists of leveraged tools, which one of those excites you the most? Which one do you go, yeah, I really like to focus on that? Oh, podcasts we covered too as well. So podcasts, you have a choice here of you can host your own podcast, or you can be a guest, or you can do both. I've just started the hosting my own podcast. So I really enjoy that. I think I'm going to enjoy that. I'm a bit, I'm observing how much time it can potentially take. But again, that's a great way of getting to know people as well. Okay. So Janice is JVs, yeah. Joanne's writing a book. That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. That's your happy place, isn't it, Joe? That's your sandpit where you like to play. Yeah, that's right, Phil. You know what, in the transcript of the law, they mentioned television, magazines, newspapers, and the traditional mass media, and I left that out. just because I felt it was kind of changing. But you're right, they are still players. And I think that's probably, if you don't have an advertising budget, that's probably where a PR person can be really helpful. You know, they can get you those interviews, you know, on the current affairs programs and things, and in magazines. Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Okay. Yeah, Vince saying a PR event. Yeah. All right. Okay, so just getting clear on that and starting to zone in on what's going to give you, what you can put some energy into without feeling you have to spread yourself over everything. Where do you feel you're going to get the greatest leverage by applying your energy into this particular space, and just become really good at that? Because we're talking about stuff that you enjoy, right? It's not stuff you have to do. If it feels like a chore, you're not going to enjoy it, and you're not going to sustain it. So just remember with this, all of this, none of this is organic. It has to come through concerted effort. You don't just go, oh, I'll just organically create my, you know, my profile out there. It'll just kind of happen over time. You have to be really strategic about it, and focus on what it is that you enjoy, what speaks to your, what plays on your strengths, your natural strengths, your core intelligence, your learning modality. All of these come into play here. Yeah, and just ask what tool will work best for your goal, and just start working with the one tool. Have the courage to focus, and the discipline, and focus on providing value. So this is really important, and this is the step that I kind of skipped. So what happens is we can get a little bit obsessed with, I've got to make income, and confuse the two. Initially, it's really about providing value. And that's really what prompted me to open up this mastermind. I thought, I love teaching. I love putting these laws to pictures and translating them for people. Why don't I just do it for more people? That makes sense. So go, okay, how could you use whatever the platform is where you kind of shine and offer value, but don't expect anything in return at this point. Just keep putting it out there. You know, there's that saying, give, take, give, take. I don't know about that. It's you know, it's a boxing term, and it kind of feels like boxing to me. Maybe it's more about just putting yourself out there because you enjoy it, and people will get that. At the end of the day, they're going to relate to your energy more than what you actually say. So where is your energy going to be highest? So remember, having millions of followers is not enough. You need an audience that's responsive and engaged, and they're way more likely to be that if you're enjoying what you're doing. Just, I hope this makes sense, and I'm aware that I'm doing a lot of talking here, but I just want to check in with you guys. Just write MS if this is starting to gel for you. That you need to really focus on a medium that you enjoy, a platform you enjoy, and then in the spirit of enjoying it, of playing, you know, share as much as you can. Come from a place of enormous abundance. Excellent. Great. Because I don't know about you guys, but I really do look forward to my days now. I didn't used to, and it's a very novel experience for me, and it really does come from, it was just a light bulb went on for me. I went, oh my God, yeah, I'm just supposed to be out there sharing. It makes so much sense. And make sure also that you're attracting the right people. So this again comes back to your goal. Okay. How are we going for time? All right. Okay, step 3. Okay, so become the expert in your chosen field. Now, again, this is all about refining, and you might not know right now exactly who your ideal, thanks, Phil. You might not know who your ideal audience is right now until you've really started working with quite a few people. So this is going to come from really putting yourself out there, but become the expert in your chosen field. So the goal here, what happens is, what we think is the path is that we get knowledge, we create a product or a service, and then we just put it out there, and we expect people to come flying through our door and paying us money in return for our product or service. And we're missing the most important step here, is step 3, where your goal is actually, before you can achieve the big goal of impact, the intermediary goal is to build trust. People have to know you. If they don't know you and they don't trust you, they're certainly not going to want to learn from you, or they're not going to want to know about what it is you do. Yeah. That's right. So Vince is just sharing here about tapping into passion. Passion is the fuel that drives us all. So and when you are talking and you're talking from a place of passion, you can't fake passion. It comes from you. This is what builds trust. So that's why it makes sense that it's something that you genuinely care about. So getting in front of people as much as you can, using whatever that platform is, whether it's a networking room or whether it's a speaking stage or whether it's a podcast, getting in front of people, delivering value, and providing this value without asking anything in return. Okay. Now, I know some of us here have studied the law of exchange, and there's a type of exchange called criminal exchange, which is where you can actually do more harm than good if you put yourself out there and don't get something in return. We're not talking about that. So what that means is, if you said to someone, I'm going to take you through my program and you don't have to pay me a cent. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about here is not giving your stuff away for free, but being generous and giving your wisdom to others for their benefit. So do you see the difference? And your wisdom and your enthusiasm, when you give that, you actually do get something in return. So when you do that, just enter in the chat, what do you get in return? What have you noticed when you are there, either on the speaking stage or whatever that platform is, or maybe having written a book and you've just published it, or whatever it is, when you've shared something of yourself with others that comes from you and you put it out there. So in other words, you're giving value to help people. What do you feel in return? Yeah, Lisa, yeah, you help yourself by helping others. Absolutely. Yeah, AJ, I feel elated and joy. Yeah, so can you see how you are getting something tangible? Yeah, Phil, validation and fulfillment. Absolutely. It starts to build that sense of self. Yeah, Vince, meaningful connection. Yeah. Joe, universal flow back to me through others. Yeah, through other means. Exactly. So putting value out there should not be an exhausting exercise. You are getting something. Yeah, Karen, sense of altruism, feeling like a valuable contributor to a better world. Absolutely. So straight away, any sense of imposter syndrome, you're starting to tame that as well. You really are becoming the bigger person who can really achieve that goal, but you got to give, provided it is giving back to you in that way. Yeah, being of service is the best. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is what's required. We can't shortcut this, right? But why would we want to if it gives us joy? So the law states allow 3 to 6 months of concerted effort. Maybe it will take longer. Maybe you feel you've already been doing it for 3 to 6 months, but maybe you haven't been doing it in such a concerted, focused way. So however long it takes, understand it's like planting a seed. You've got to be patient. Must be consistent. Yeah. Who's broken that rule? I'm putting my hand up here. Must be consistent. You know, I've done things and then I've gone, oh, I must go and do something else. Yeah. So if you're not being consistent, that's a signal that maybe you're using the wrong platform, and maybe you're not actually enjoying it. So yeah. So I send out a weekly email. Some of you probably get that. I actually really enjoy that, and I kind of lie in bed planning it and thinking, oh yeah, I'll write this, I'll write that. It's giving back to myself. So that's the only reason I've been able to maintain it. It's not through an act of willpower. So consistency comes from having the self-awareness to know what it is you enjoy doing. Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Janice. And just keep watering it so long as you're enjoying the process. Or there might be moments where you don't feel like doing it, but there's a bigger picture here, of course, pulling you through. So if you do this over time, people will that trust bridge will be built, and they'll start to assign you authority over a topic or field. Okay. So now I'm going to put this back to you. So who do you want to become the go-to person for? So this is where I'm going to ask you to be more specific than you were in the goal section. So for instance, Naomi, think about who do you want to be the go-to person for, because it won't be, even though the goal is to transform lives in one sense or another and help people and solve a problem. How you do that is what it is that you become known for, that expert that speaks to the how. So how are you going to do that? So Naomi, for you, it might be, I want to be the go-to person. And this is where you can become very, very specific, you know, for women in their 20s who want to look and feel their very best, you know, through health and nutrition. So I want to be known as, you know, the person for young single women to go to for health and nutrition to look their best. I'll give you an example. My dad was an ear doctor, and everyone, when he was an ear, nose and throat specialist in the beginning and said, I'm going to focus on ears, all his peers said, oh, you're crazy, you know, you'll never have enough business. Well, he died with a patient list of 30,000 people, but what's important is he was known as Dr. Ears. So he was, if you had an ear problem, he was the guy you went to. And in a way, that's kind of where we want to get to. We want to get to that level of, oh, this is the problem, you go to that person. Right? So have a think about that. Who do you want to be the go-to person for? And, you know, there's no, in the spirit of there's no right or wrong answer, just enter in the chat who you would like to become. How would you like people to call you? And again, keep it as short as you can. Keep it punchy. Yeah, so you might be, and also thanks for that, AJ. You might be also targeting women of a certain age as well. Maybe you can speak to that group in your title. Yeah. Even Lisa, I'm just wondering, you know, could it even be, you know, because I'm thinking of NLP, you know, possibly it's the go-to person for NLP, you know, because there's already a market that are aware of NLP and want that. I'm just saying maybe the more specific you can be here, the better. I'm just throwing ideas around. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. Yeah. So imagine if you could bring this down to just a few words. You know, actually, Karen, I'm going to borrow something that you described for me. You called me the breakthrough queen, and I've actually used that. And I would probably say I want to be the go-to person for I want to be the breakthrough queen for people in transition. And what I'm looking at the moment is, can I narrow that down further? Because some people, there are some sectors of people who are in transition, you know, obviously in the corporate sector, people who might be working for, say, you know, a corporation want to go into consultancy and they're stuck. Or people who might be addicted to food and they want to, you know, lose that weight. Or sports stars, you know, people who have known celebrity and then have a big crash because when they retire, they don't know who they are. That's kind of the area where I like to work. And so I'm still exploring this. How far do I take this? You know, to what degree do I specialize? So what I'm saying here is that the answer isn't always apparent until you've really started working with people and just see where the work resonates the most. Yeah. So Captain Energy, yes. Yeah. Well, you know, Captain Energy, Karen, is very appropriate. And I think Captain Energy would be the person you want to talk to if you're feeling a bit stuck and needed some motivation, you know. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily laugh at that. I think it's very apt. Yeah. And also it's memorable. That's the other thing. I'll speak to Karen. Look, honestly, she's Captain Energy. I could hear myself saying that. Yeah, AJ, yeah. So you might want to say, you know, I am this for this audience. Yeah, so Lisa, this is where that's exactly what you are, Lisa Bowers. And maybe, you know, you're the organization queen or the freedom fighter, right? The freedom fighter for entrepreneurs, because you give to them their time back through what you do. So have fun with this. You might not have the answer right now, but just start to go, yeah, How do I want people to refer to me? What do I want to be known as? All right. Yeah. Book publishing queen. Yeah, exactly, Joe. Yeah. Or warrior. Again, what do you like? How would you like to be referred to? Yeah, exactly, Gnomes. Queen of confidence and health for single women. Yeah. The pocket rocket. Yeah. You are like energy on legs, absolutely. And again, that aligns with the problem you're wanting to solve, getting people off the bench. So you wouldn't go with that if you were an ear surgeon, for instance. You wouldn't want a pocket rocket operating on your cochlea, but it absolutely aligns with the problem you want to solve. So that's a fit. Yeah, 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 absolutely, Lisa. So yeah, explosive change. Um, Yeah, I think you could even distill it down more, but I can't think it right now. But yeah, yeah, and she's got a great title for now, which is Misfit, and that's actually the name of her business, and it kind of speaks to who she is as well, because she's not a conventional person. She's gone from wearing a lab coat to wearing, stilettos and sequins. But it absolutely works for her, and it's lovely that she's turned it into her business name as well, Misfit, and it speaks to her audience. So it's an amazing convergence there. And so, but still working on your title for your new adventure. Yeah, so start thinking about that. Yeah, yeah, Janice, the consummate bridge builder. I'm the bridge builder. Yeah, and do you see how simple that is and how memorable it is? So start thinking of yourself as a billboard. You are a human brand, and how would you like people to think about you? Yeah, so I see myself as a go-to person for people in transition who are feeling stuck, and I need to bring this down to something that's very memorable, like a badge that I can wear. And I'm still exploring who I can help the most, but at the moment I'm working with particularly business owners and entrepreneurs wanting to exit. So I work with professionals and yeah. Okay, so just we better pull this up. Okay. All right, moving right on. Okay, Danger Will Robinson. I don't know if any of you watch Lost in Space. Lisa and I were talking about it yesterday, and it made me think about this. We get to this point where we become the go-to person for something, and then something happens. And who has experienced this? A feeling of resistance, like lying in bed going, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. This isn't working the way I thought. I'm feeling like, I thought I was on track. And yeah, AJ, I thought I was on track, and for some reason, it just feels too hard. And am I crazy? So you're going to meet with resistance. If it's not from within, it's also going to be without and outside of you. And the problem is, if the resistance from outside of you triggers something within, this is an issue, right? So what are some examples of resistance? People who hate what you're doing. Have you ever had a hater on social media? It's like quite confronting, isn't it? Even though it's their problem, it's still confronting. Or, people telling you you're insane. Oh, you're crazy. Why don't you do this? I've had friends say that to me. Oh, Janet, shouldn't you be doing blah, blah? And I'm going, yeah, but I would be miserable if I did that. So, but even so, there's still voices out there, aren't there? Maybe negative family members. Family's tricky. I haven't really experienced this myself, but I know that probably your hardest audience are going to be family members because they've seen you grow up, they know you warts and all, and they might have their own issues. So, sometimes you're going to have negativity right from within your inner circle. And you keep, if you've gone down that path of putting good products out there and, constantly refining and all of that, and you go, I don't get this. How come I'm working so hard and it's not happening for me? So, but you're not getting any response. So just know one thing. Yeah. When you go through this, it is part of the journey. You are supposed to experience this. This is nothing to do with you weren't born to succeed or you're a failure or anything like that. No matter whatever that little voice is saying to you, it's nothing to do with this. Maybe you've got a partner who's saying, oh, we should be making more money. Can you do something about your sales? All of these trigger resistance within us. So here's something that you need to understand. And this is coming from the law. I didn't make this up. And this is something that at this point, this is where most people will give up. They'll quit. Or they'll do what I did. They'll skip around the steps because we didn't know any better. So I started focusing on, oh, how do I create a train the trainer program before I created any real demand for my process? It was crazy. But I thought, oh, that's me being, the big ambitious person. And thank goodness I got pulled up in time because I'm not ready for that yet. So the issue is if you're in obscurity or resistance, these are the two states, creating more products or finding some kind of sideline is not going to help you. It's not going to work. So understand this is where most people fall down at this point when they've gone a certain level and then they meet with negativity, they go, it's too hard. Yeah. So I just think this is such a gem to come out of this law. Resistance is necessary to give you the drive to push through discomfort to gain acceptance. So resistance is there for a reason. It's almost like the universe has put a big stop sign in front of you, and now you have to find your way to move around that stop sign. Either you jump over it or you smash it down, whatever you do. It's put it there deliberately to see what you're made of and to see if you really do have the stomach for it. And I find knowing that this is a part of the journey, it's not about me, it's the piece of the journey, maybe it's the dark night of the soul, that it's the part that we have to endure in order to grow. So knowing that it's universal and it's absolutely there for a reason, does that make it easier for you? Just put yes or no in the chat. If you know that next time someone is nasty on social media or whatever, know that this is actually part of the plan. All right. Yeah. And you're just being tested. That's all. So don't use external factors to create reasons for your logical mind to go, told you it was too hard. Don't allow that, because that's what most people do, just because they don't know any better. Okay. All right, Karen's talking to flocks of cockies showing up. They've never been here before. Isn't that interesting? So my spirit animal is the cockatoo, but the black one represents the shadow. And I think what's happening there is we're seeing that, yeah, the shadow will show up and the shadow will try and protect you by keeping you small. That's the shadow's job. It's not inherently bad or evil or malevolent, but it's there to try and protect you from being harmed or hurt. And so if that happens, understand that that's what's going on and just push through that. All right. Yeah. So this is the test. Do not give up. Understand this is part of the process. It's not a step in the process, but it's something to be aware of. All right. Yeah, exactly, Sarah. The process of problem solving when hurdles appear is really rewarding. It's building your muscle. Okay, now I'm aware that we're on time now, so I'm going to have to speed up because I want to finish this. So the next step after you've done all of this, right, after you've taken on board whatever tools, self-educated yourself to get whatever information, skills, techniques, talents, whatever that you need to develop, when you've done that, and then you've also used all the tools that are available to you now. Yeah, there are probably too many, but just focus on one. And then we start putting value out there consistently, giving value, not expecting anything in return. It's a state of grace that we all have to achieve and not let fear win over. And then when we still get resistance and we still want to give up, and know that that's part of the journey and follow through, this is when the money will start to land, okay? But we can't accelerate this process. If you break the rules, if you try and leapfrog straight to step 4, what's going to happen? And maybe I've experienced this too, going out too early. Yeah, and it's kind of embarrassing in a funny way. So we don't want that to happen to us. We want to build that trust and just have that graciousness to allow the time that it needs to build. So what we're doing now, when you monetize, what's happening is the marketplace has gone from trusting you to accepting you as the go-to expert. Okay, so this is the lovely area where we want to be. What's the mistake most entrepreneurs make? They want to go straight from launch to acceptance. And so you cannot achieve this fourth step until you've followed steps 1 to 3. All right. Just write yes in the chat if you feel that you get this and you're prepared to follow those steps. Just put yes in the chat, or no if that's the case. If you understand this and you can make sense of it and you're prepared to follow these steps. Yeah. Good. It is helpful, isn't it, Lisa? Because it kind of, well, firstly, it normalizes however we might be feeling, but it also gives us an instructive path that's coming from, you know, time-tested wisdom, if you like. Yeah, validates, absolutely. So finally, when you're at that level where you're actually making the income, this is when you really make your impact. We're here to make a difference, and this is where the difference starts to be felt, because people, when they not only trust you, but they accept you, and what you're doing works, they will start to talk about you to others. And this is really where we want to get to, referrals, and not necessarily paying people commissions for referrals, that they refer you because it makes them feel good. That's really where we want to get to. This is where the ripple effect starts to happen, where you start to make your impact. And this is possibly where, if you've got a program where you might want to train others to teach, you're probably going to look at it at this point. You go, okay, this is working. Now, how do I really upscale it? So making your impact happens as a natural consequence of all the work you've done before. It's like you're now finally starting to reap the rewards. But if you don't, that planting the seed analogy, if we don't water it, it's not going, the tree won't bear fruit. The only way to achieve your goal of thriving as against surviving. So remember that line, the orange line. If we want to get off that line of survival and into thriving, we actually have to stay focused on making the impact. What happens if you don't follow each of these 5 steps? Well, you haven't built the foundation, and so the house isn't going to be very solid. And yeah, yeah, there will be a recording, Joanne. Yeah, in the Facebook, actually, I'm going to post that. Yeah. So finally, let's just summarize. Step 1: get educated, create your leverage tools, become the expert in your chosen field. That's when the money flows. And then at that point, your impact will happen. And that's why you're doing this in the first place. But don't try and shortcut the process. So these 5 steps create the foundation for your success. And just as a builder wouldn't think about setting the roof before he's created the walls and the foundation, nor can we. We have to follow this. So basically, really, you have a choice. You can continue just to stay on that orange line, influencing one person at a time, struggle to eke out a living, or you can make a significant impact and achieve your goal. And so that's the choice, and it's really up to you. But now that this law, the law of impact, just write in the chat, just 1 or 2, where we say 1 is where you're just working with one person at a time, and 2 is making a significant impact. And I'm going to add a third option, both, right? Because I'm not saying that you should just stop coaching or training people. But which number will you opt for if you've got a choice? Would it be 1, just to continue on your path, 2, to go and really focus? And yeah, so Russ is saying both, yeah, or 3, doing both. Yeah. But now you can see that you're holding these two balls together. It's not one or the other. Excellent. Yeah. So, would you like to continue? So I offer these masterminds every week. Next week's law is the law of consistency, consistency. So if you would like to continue, you're more than welcome to join this room if you found this helpful. I thought, I don't want to overwhelm people with different platforms. I've got a Facebook group that I call Behind the Fifth Door, and that's where we're going to post the recordings. So if you miss out, the recordings will be there. And this is just like a handy go-to place. It's basically the vessel for the recordings. And I post content there as well. Like I said, my platform is mostly LinkedIn, but I do have this Facebook presence as well. Yeah, next week, the law of consistency. And I was going to say, if you want to invite someone to join, you're more than welcome. I would just say, but they kind of have to fit the mold that they too are on their path of wanting to do something, wanting to make their impact in the world. Okay. So what I'd ask you to do now, if you want to join the Facebook group and we don't have your email, if you could just put your email in the chat or private message me your email, just so we've got that, and we can invite you. If you, or actually, Ben, could you post in the chat the Facebook link? Might be even easier. Yeah. So, and finally, before we wind up, I'd just like to reiterate. Okay, I like to formalize these lessons with some kind of action that's tangible. So here's what I'm suggesting. I'm not going to hold you accountable. That's not my job. So you have to hold yourself accountable. I'm not going to check in on you. But here's what I suggest moving forward, to get clear on your goal and put it up somewhere visible. Thanks, Phil. I appreciate that. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, just click on that and that's how you can access the recordings. So stick your goal up somewhere visible, pinpoint the next thing you need to learn, right? What area is that going to be in? Is it, you know, what's your preferred method of learning, in other words? Choose one leverage tool and focus on that. So I'm not saying suddenly abandon all the others, but choose a hero platform that you just know you light up in, because that's probably going to be where people are going to engage with you most readily. And there's probably ways that you could be doing it better as well. And again, that might start to give you a clue as to where your next learning needs to come from, the education. You know, so maybe, you know, if it's a podcast, how could you really make better use of the podcast so that it's also a lead generator for you? Because you know, it's not just about creating presence, but you want to get more clients as well. So how could you use that, for example? Assume the identity of the expert and take action, stay curious. All right, so what I'd like you to do now, just before we wind up, is just enter in the chat, what's the most valuable thing that you've taken away from this session? I just want to know that this is delivering value, that this is worthwhile. So just share in the chat, and this is also helpful when you can start to coalesce, take one thing away, you start to anchor that learning. Just enter in the chat what you, the most valuable thing that you've taken from this. It can be, yeah, thanks. Yeah, Lisa, validation of where I'm at and steps to focus on. Exactly. Yeah, I think that is what I got to, that feeling of, oh, it's okay to feel that sense of, yeah, should I give up? No, that's actually part of the process. Yeah. Yeah, complete the 3 goals first. Yeah, absolutely. So otherwise, we're kind of dooming ourselves. Thanks, Naomi. And having an overview of the 5 steps. Thanks, Janice. Yeah. Lisa, reminder you're on the right path. Excellent. Yeah. And now it's really just now, you know, recalibrating all the time, but staying true to the path, getting to a focal point on each step. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I think that's important, particularly, you know, so many of us in this space get shiny object syndrome. We do need to focus. Yeah, not who you know, but who knows you and who trusts you. That's a nice, I like that reframe on that, Russ. Yeah. Think through the preferred learning method and what the leverage tool is. Yeah, because we're presented with all of them and we kind of feel guilty if we're not across all of them, but that's ridiculous. So, you know, it's almost like polygamy, isn't it? Polygamy of the brain. So what you want to do is commit to one. Yeah, be super clear on your niche and vision. Yeah, that's right. And so that probably requires from all of us, me included, further work too, to really refine that. Yeah, reaffirmation that the processes you have in place are the right way forward. That's fantastic. Yeah, so that's excellent. Clarity that I'm a go-to person for possibility and inspiration more so than a process. Yeah, totally, Karen. Yeah, you're the ignition point. You're the igniter. You know, the kerosene that goes onto people's little spark. That's what you do. The catalyst. Vince moving from expert in obscurity to expert providing value. Yeah. And you've got such a tangible product too, and a tangible vision and mission, Vince. I think, you know, I don't think you'll have problem. What Vince has got, because he's got 1.3 billion people with a disability, he's got something that people go, yes, I get that. That's such a tangible problem. And it's hard for us in the space of transformation to make the problem so tangible, but I think that's kind of our job. How do we do that? Yeah, excellent, everyone. So I'm really pleased that you got that. And so next week, we're going to be here, the law of consistency. I'm going to be sharing that. You're welcome to join the room, and I'd love to see you there. If there's someone that you think would benefit, but they have to be someone who's kind of, you know, got the right mindset of bigger picture, you're welcome to invite them as well. The idea is that we have a group here that meets consistently, where you know the quality that you're going to get. And also, who knows, it might turn into a bit of a networking group once we get to know what each other does. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for really playing it 100%. You're awesome, and I look forward to seeing some of you next week. Bye for now.